Now that we have most of the drums in place, let's start shaping the sounds a little bit. First, let's rename these tracks so that we know what they mean if we have to do a mix down later. So I'm just going to right click it and say rename, and I'm going to call this one the kick. And the second one is claps. And then we have our hats. Now, right now it sounds pretty good, but actually all these sounds are far too loud when we start adding other instruments to our track. So I'm going to select them all by just clicking the last one and then shift clicking the top one and then right clicking and say group tracks. And this will group them all in one. Now I'm going to rename this group and call it drums, so that if I want to mute the drums at some point later in time, I can mute them all at the same time. Next, I'm going to just drag it open a little bit so that I have more room to play, and it shows us our volume, and I'm going to put the volume at -4. Now this is going to make all the tracks in this group sound a little bit less loud. Alright, then I'm going to make the hats a little less loud also by making them -4 or so. But now we're going to add some effects to those hats. Because if I solo the hats by clicking the S button, which is soloing this track, which means it only plays the sound of this track, and I listen, it sounds a little bit corny. To make it fuller and more saturated, we're going to add some flavor to this one. Alright, so go over to the right here and click this second icon, and this is all your devices and instruments that come with Live. So there's 3 folders here. Your instruments, which are all basically effects that make sounds, then your MIDI effects, which is to tweak notes around, and then last but not least our audio effects, and we'll use a bunch of these. Let's open up audio effects here, and basically every audio workstation has these effects. These are very standard in audio editing. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a reverb to the hats. Now all we need to do is drag the reverb to the audio effect of this track. You can either just drop it on the track like so, or if the bottom tab here is selected that has the effects of this track, you can drop them here, and as you can see, the reverb is now added. Now your question may be, what is a reverb?
My show and tell is about the reverb. Reverb comes from the word reverberate. Reverberate is the echo that happens when sound bounces off the wall 1,000 times a second. You can have reverb in a really large cathedral or in a very small oil drum. In music, you can use the reverb to basically smear out the sounds like you would smear out a snail on the pavement to make it go die die. Any questions?
Now that we know what a reverb is, it is time to start shaping it a little bit. Our track is still soloed, so if I play it, you can hear the effect. If I turn it off, you can hear the effect without it. Alright, so let's turn it on and start shaping this a little bit. I'm going to up the decay time, which is the length of the reverb, or the echo if you will. And that's a little bit too much, but we're going to slice some of it off anyway. So we're going to create and make the size of the decay a little less long, and we're going to make the quality of the reverb high quality, because we want a nicely sounding reverb there. Then we're going to take the dry wet down a little bit, and dry wet basically means how much this whole effect is impacting the sound. So basically, if the effect is a pool and you throw it into the pool, you basically decide how dry or wet the other it comes out the other end. So every effect almost in any audio editing workstation has a dry wet knob, and basically means the impact of the effect. So let's see what this sounds like. It's pretty good, maybe a little long. Let's take the decay time back a little bit, and the tweaking here is really in the small details, which over time you develop an ear for. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a saturator. And a saturator is basically an overdrive. It's sort of a distortion of the sound, but so slightly that it colors up the sound a lot nicer. So I'm going to push the drive up there to about 2 decibels louder than it was than when it came in. And I'm going to take the dry wet down in the output also a little bit. Let's see what this sounds like. I'm going to keep the output pretty loud actually. And then I'm going to select a different curve just to see what it does with the sound. You can see that saturated it up a lot, maybe a little bit too much. Let's see. Let's do a sinoid. You can hear how much it impacts the sound. Alright, I think that sounds about right. Let's hear what it sounds like in the entire mix to make sure it's not too loud. Maybe it's a little loud. Let's take the output down. And there we have it. Our drums have been perfected a little more. Now, you may be asking, why do you add so much reverb and stuff to the hats? Didn't they sound great to start off with? Well, not really. The hats are nice, but in dubstep, there's always a lot of noise going on in the background to make it very grungy, and that's what I like to hear. So next, we're going to start adding some melodies to this track to make sure that we